Wealth is not an outcome, it's a ratio. And the same thing goes with like healthy eating. Healthy eating is not an outcome, it's not 100, it's actually a ratio, the ratio of like 80-20 or 70-30, whatever it is. And I think like one of the things that I notice with like clients is like they'll be like, that food's good or that food's bad. I want them to be able to look at foods as neutral and almost like a number in terms of like its macronutrient and micronutrient profile.
All right, man, let's do this.
All right.
And I've been looking forward to this all week. You've no idea. I've actually been saying to my girlfriend like all week. I've been like, I'm gonna go to, I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about that because I think there's I love like the parallels between what you're doing and I suppose what I'm trying to like learn from my own podcast. So it's awesome, man, to see someone who firstly looks so young as you do at 42, but lives through it, what he speaks. That's so important that
Yeah.
you're not filled with bullshit, you know?
I'd like to think so. Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Mhm.
There's like this. So I've grown on social media for the past couple of years, and everything that I put out there is like me. And I wanted to make sure that because I think Sam Harris did the book, which is called Lies, and
Mhm.
it's such a energy waster to just put out stuff that you don't necessarily think of or believe in. So, I hope I am an example of the things that I talk about. I'm not perfect, obviously, for
Mhm.
sure. I'm not perfect, but always trying to get better, for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting paradigm, isn't it? That people will put out in a perspective because they think that's what's going to fit the mold to take off or become viral or whatnot, you know?
Yeah.
And then ultimately it's you just kind of living through your experiences. And that's why it's interesting because when you were younger, you were not as fit as what you are now, you know?
Mm.
So why do you do what you do now?
Uh, I do what I do because of just one word, which is just help. And I remember that when I was about, say, early 20s, around 23, 22, at that point, or even before that, I was really out of shape. And then uh, I remember playing basketball at one time. And then the thing that just was signaling to me that something was off was the fact that I was running up and down the court for the first time in a long time. And then I just felt this like jiggle on my chest. And then when I went back home, took off my shirt, I'm like, holy crap, like started feeling my pecs. I was like, I got like man boobs. And that was like my signal to change. And I did everything I could to get my body in shape. And then that's actually the precursor to feeling all these like amazing benefits that come along with getting your body in shape when you exercise and take care of your health and you eat right and when you sleep right and do all of these things, you just start to think better. You start to improve yourself as a human being. And I think it
Mm.
was at 23 or 24, my mom had passed away. And at that moment in time, I was working a job where I just utterly hated. And it was making a decent amount of money. And I had what I would call, like, at that moment in time, like the golden handcuffs, which is like you're making a decent amount of money and you just hate or you're just not enthused by what you're doing. And then I remember I was just like talking to a friend and I was just like, fuck, like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I just kept on kind of like asking myself, like, what is it? And like, if it's not this, then what is it? And the only word that came to my mind was just like help, just help other people. And I
Mm.
could not think of a better way of helping other people than getting their bodies in shape. Um, Fitness to me is like the number one meta habit in the entire world, right? Like, if you make more money, it's not going to make you more fit. It's not going to improve your health. But if you get yourself fit, it can actually lead to more money. It can actually lead to better relationships. It can actually lead to all these amazing things because when you're feeling better about yourself and when you're feeling great, then it bleeds over to every single area of your life. So the reason I do what I do is because, namely, I just want to just help people become better human beings.
Mm. That's so fascinating, man, because like a lot of people will put that as a secondary. They're like, oh, I need to work on this business. I need to work on my exams. I need to work on my school. And then it looks like, oh, like health and fitness will just take care of itself, or we
Yeah.
don't need to worry about it. Do you think that there was an element of like you didn't want to admit you're out of shape? Like, you looked in the mirror and you said, oh, like, okay, I have a belly. But is it because you deliberately try to block that from your mind? And is this something that happens to a lot of people generally?
So I feel it's I feel it's both. So number one is that when someone's out of shape, deep down inside of their minds, they know in their heart of hearts that something is wrong, that something is off. And then what humans, especially if they want to deny this reality, what happens as a result is they go about and they try to overcompensate in other ways, whether it's like making more money or um I don't know, getting good at game, like whatever it is. And it's kind of like both. It's like I knew, but then I was also denying the reality of it by putting my head in the sand and just letting my body deteriorate. And it would actually show up in, I like to call it symptoms, right? So
Mhm.
there are specific symptoms that come along with being out of shape. One of them for me, big symptom was like wearing my shirt to the pool. I did not want to have my body seen. Every single time I took off my shirt, I was like, oh God, like I don't want people to see this. And a lot of people will just be like, well, you know, Dan, that's just like being unconfident about your body. But yeah, that's like a symptom if you're not like proud of what you see, and that is actually in relation to the effort that you're not putting in. That's a symptom. The other
Mhm.
symptoms were obviously man boobs. Like I did not see the reality until I started to feel it. And the only reason I started to feel it was because I was like, is something worse going on? Like, do I have like, I thought it was like breast cancer or something like that. I was just like, what
Mhm.
is like what's happening here? And then I took off my thing, I took off my shirt, and I was just like, good Lord, like what happened? And I feel like with a lot of people in their health, it's just they want to put their heads in the sands and just deny reality. And then the more that they do that, obviously, the more that they will see other signs like low energy, fatigue, and all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And the thing I say about like getting out of shape or not being in shape in general is that the more out of shape that you are, it's a slow burn. The same thing goes with getting in shape as well. And here's what I mean. When you get out of shape, it's not like it hits you all at once. It's like a slow and gradual pace to the bottom. So these people who let their bodies get out of shape, they don't necessarily see it because it's not instant. It's not in their face. It happens over the course of months and years. The same thing goes with getting in shape as well. Um, it is such a slow burn getting in shape that I have to get clients to be like, okay, how much on scale of 1 to 10, how much energy are you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much more confident do you feel in your bodies? And they're like, you know what, like I'm like an 8, and I feel like I was like a 6 before. And
Mhm.
they have to think about it because it's such a slow and gradual process in improvement and deterioration. And that's the whole thing with this whole fitness thing. It's like it's not instant gratification. You will not see these benefits. Maybe you'll see the benefits after like taking a walk and still have to like think about it, right? But
Mhm.
you will not see the benefits until you say journal out your experiences and then look maybe a couple weeks or a couple months down the line with all the improvements that you're making. You're like, holy crap, I'm like a different person. And if I may, so I have actually quit alcohol for the last 22 days, right? I wasn't an alcoholic,
Mhm.
but I was drinking on occasion. I was drinking like maybe like once or twice a week and whatever it is. Having the odd alcoholic drink, like the odd wine, the odd old fashioned, or the odd beer. And then I was just like, you know what? I've never gone a significant period of time since like my 20s of like getting rid of this substance. So I want to see exactly what's going to happen. And during that time, I've made so many strides with my business. I've made a number of strides with my health. And I would not know this stuff is happening unless so I've been taking like a journal every
Mhm.
single day, which I hadn't been doing. And I've been journaling out my process. And I'm just like, this happened, that happened. I feel like this, I feel like that. Not going to say like every day is perfect, but
Of
it's
course.
it's such a slow burn, right? And you won't know unless you actually like note down what the differences are.
Man, that's a huge part of understanding like the actual it's the metrics. Like
Yeah.
picture you're a founder or an entrepreneur listening to this, you'll have a metric for your business, you'll have a KPI, you'll have a target you have to hit. We often go through like these health habits or fads and then don't like monitor the actual progress. We think we
Mhm.
want to lose fat or gain muscle and there's no metric around it. So I've been training in bodybuilding for over 12 years now, going on 13 years, competing at like a national level. And over the last 5, 6 years, super busy with my own business, right? It was only until a couple of months ago where I said I was so busy that I can't handle the mental bandwidth of training and nutrition that I started to get a coach. I
Mm.
got a bodybuilder coach who will take care of all of this. He's pushing me then on a daily basis. Not pushing me, but he was giving me guidelines of, biomechanic feedback. So how does my diet? How's my digestion? How's my stress? How's my sleep? What's my water intake? What's my attitude towards the gym? And
Mm.
what's my energy leaving the gym? And just these small little things have made someone who's been training all their life think, fuck, this is where I want to go. This is how I want to improve. And the drink aspect is huge, man. I'm the exact same. So,
Mm.
being Irish, we're very, very like used to drinking.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with it. But since the summer, I've had one glass of wine since June. And there's nothing greater, I think, than waking up on a Sunday feeling super fresh, heading to the gym, coming back, doing a bit of work, having a bit of fun with your partner or whatever, and being able to do that. It's just like it's a new way of thinking, I think. And the way you're explaining it is very counter narrative to how entrepreneurs, to business people, to anyone who's successful would go about doing it. They think it's something has to go.
Yeah. I find that entrepreneurs are very all or nothing, right?
Mhm.
And this is actually what makes them successful. It also is what holds them back when it comes to their own bodies. And when an entrepreneur kind of like goes at it and gets themselves in shape, uh, the very first thing that they're going to do is like, how can I get this result in the fastest way possible? Right. And all
Yeah.
they're thinking about is like the outcome. They're not even thinking about process, right? They're like, okay, here's my plan to lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks. This is what I'm going to do. And the thing I love about what your coach is doing, how do you feel after you go to the gym? How do you feel while you're in the gym? How much water are you drinking? Right. Like, and like, how much sleep are you getting? And what he's doing is he's like tracking these intangibles and also the process of what should actually line up to getting you onto the stage in the best way possible. And entrepreneurs are just like, okay, I'm just gonna like cut carbs and I'm just gonna like count calories and I'm just gonna hit the gym for like 3 days a week and I'm just gonna go for it, right? And unfortunately, they may get to their goal, but they put so much emphasis on the outcome that they actually lost sight of what the process is. And the thing about
Mhm.
getting in shape, especially like for entrepreneurs, we're not trying to, unless you're like going for like an ultra marathon or a marathon, trying to get your body on stage. You're doing this for life. You're doing this to become a better human being for the lifetime. So you have to get yourself away from these outcome based perspectives. Yes, it's okay to set a goal, but you really have to put 99% of that focus onto what the process is. It does pay to have a professional like your coach to actually point you in the right direction, to talk you off the ledge a little bit sometimes when you're like thinking
Mhm.
like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? And on the terms of like metrics as well, what I find with a lot of entrepreneurs is that we were talking about, hey, like when did you know like you're out of shape or we talked about the head in the sand a little bit. So the thing about entrepreneurs is that they're going to track their income every single day. They're going to track their sales conversions every single day. They're going to track their how their website converts, like whatever it is. They know their numbers, but when it comes to their body, they're like, I was like, okay, so cool. When's the last time you weighed yourself? Like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Like,
Mm.
yeah, it's like,
Facing reality to open up a P&L statement that's
uh,
negative.
yeah, exactly. And they haven't like weighed themselves in like 6 months. They haven't got their blood work done. They haven't even like measured out their waistline. On the deeper level, like get a DEXA scan or something like that to see where
Mm.
your true body fat levels are, right? They don't want to see these numbers because they're so scared about what they are going to see. But the reality is that you need to have these metrics. Like you need to have these things in front of your face to let you know whether or not you're making progress, whether or not what where you stand in the first place. You can't actually set a destination without knowing where you're arriving, or actually knowing where you're leaving from in the first place. So I think like
Mhm.
one of the main things is like for entrepreneurs is like you don't have to like track every single metric like you do inside your business, but you do have to track your metrics when it comes to your body on a regular basis, and you have to have a cadence to that, a frequency and a consistency to that. And if you don't, then pretty much you're flying blind, and also you're flying scared. You're not you don't want to face reality. You don't want to deal with the reality of things. So yeah,
Mm.
metrics matter.
How do you convince, let's say, an entrepreneur or someone who's a high achiever to become kind of in tune with the process, to not just focus on the outcome, to say, okay, this is the goal, this is how we're going to work there, but let's start enjoying it. Let's start enjoying the steps, the food, the nutrition.
Yeah. It's first understanding where they're coming from in terms of their mentality. Not every single entrepreneur comes with like that all or nothing mentality. A lot of them do. So we have to understand like where they're coming from, like psychologically. The way in which we try to promote this is by one, emphasizing the process, emphasizing the actual process and kind of getting them away from the outcomes a little bit. And we just like to use good old positive reinforcement. We set milestones, not when it comes to how much they weigh, but how many workouts have they done? How many meals have they tracked? How many healthy meals went into their body? And we want to set process milestones because these are the ones that actually matter, right? If you get 50 workouts in, if you get 8,000 steps a day, you do this for like 30 days straight, 50 days straight, whatever it is, that's going to help you get closer to that goal, whether you like it or not. So we want to set more so an emphasis on this process and set these goals for process oriented types of things. And that is kind of like the first step. And then the final thing, or actually the thing that we want to like use in terms of just motivation, is like positive reinforcement for the actual effort, right? Instead of saying positive reinforcement for the goal itself, or for kind of like hitting 10 pounds of weight loss. Yes, we do that too. But we want to emphasize 80% of our reinforcement on the process itself. And then the more so, the other things that we love in terms of this is we keep on asking them, okay, so think back to the very first time that we talked to each other. And we keep notes as well. So we're like, this happened, that happened, you were feeling like this, you're feeling like that. So 6 weeks now, have things change? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about your energy? How do you feel about your sleep? How do you feel about your focus? How do you feel about your mood? And we want to always have them look back to where they came from, because a lot of times with entrepreneurs, what happens, and founders, they're just so focused on like the next thing that they just lose sight of everything that they've accomplished, and they never feel proud of themselves. And also this leads to deeper psychological trauma issues, where they just like always have to go through a shame spiral of feeling bad about themselves in order to accomplish things. But that's like another podcast for like another day. But it's like we have to bring them back and have them see, hey, look how far you come, man. You've made a lot of changes. Now, what exactly is next after this? And that's I would say like that would be like the 3-step way in which we have people focus in more on the process.
And what part of that as well do you kind of try to help with, let's say, delaying gratification? As we spoke about previously, it's all part of playing the long game, and it's all about playing the long game. The benefit comes. So maybe they see the side of it with their business, and they can see the side of it with their career. But is there an aspect of delaying gratification, especially when they're going through periods of busier cycles, which to a normal person could be vacations, where they go up and down and fluctuations of weight and not training and nutrition anymore?
One of the things that we love to work on is what I would call mindset and identity. So one of the mindsets that we really work on is, number one, we talked about all or nothing mentality. The second mindset in kind of conjunction with that is having a mindset of recommitment. And recommitment is, let's just say you have your girlfriend, right? And you love your girlfriend. What people don't realize is that love is a choice that you make every single day. And you recommit to loving every single day. That's what you do. And it's not about being all or nothing with the love of, your girlfriend or whatever it is. It's actually about you wake up, stare in the eyes, and then you recommit to loving your girlfriend. And recommitment is one of the mindsets that we have to take in with our bodies, because what it does is it brings this like day one mentality, right? So I remember I was working with a client, and we had just dropped like 33 pounds. We got our DEXA scan back. He's like 62. He's like dropped 33 pounds. He gained about 7 pounds of lean mass. And there's a guy who was running a fucking like $1 billion company at the same time, like massive amounts of stress. And then I said, like, dude, like we were going through this like review, and I remember what he said to me. He was just like, we went through the review. He's got so many like of these amazing accomplishments. He's like, day one starts today. And I'm just like, I love that. and that's the mentality. It's like this mentality of just like recommitment, recommitment, recommitment. And that's one of the things that we have to do. The other thing that we want to do is lock in what we're doing to their identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not enough to just do the actions. It's not enough to just like set the habits. You have to be the habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is one of the just like the core key things that we do is like, hey, like let's just keep a journal of what we experience on an everyday basis of like going through this. And what that does is it does something very cool, which is they get to see the gradual improvements of what is happening in their life by journaling out the process. And then what happens as a result when they're writing out these benefits? Oh, I feel more clarity. Oh, I feel more focus. Oh, I feel more energy today. Oh, and then they also start to tie in some of the business benefits or some of the
Mm-hmm.
business accomplishments that they're making, like I'll use myself as an example. Like, in the 22 days, within the 22 days of me not drinking alcohol, I wrote one of the most, actually, the most viral tweet that I ever put out, or viral thread that I ever put out in my life, which was it got like 217,000 likes. It was seen by like 30 million people, and then
What the
I
hell?
tied that. I was journaling. I was like, oh hey, like this happened. And it's actually to tie these things together, so it gives
Mm-hmm.
you more reason to actually enable the behavior that you want to take action on. And
Mm-hmm.
it is in the journaling and the awareness process that you're doing this that allows you to kind of like build in these habits and also become these habits as a result, because that's like you can't be taking action without awareness. With action comes awareness, and you can't be doing blind action either, even though you're getting results. Because then if you're taking blind action, you're getting results and you're not learning anything, then you're not going to lock it down. It's not going to be a part of who you are. So there
Mm-hmm.
is, sir, I always say that body transformation itself, and even just like building a successful business, a successful podcast, like whatever it is, like is the North Star. When you do this, it's a self-development journey that is disguised as that process. And when you're going,
100%, man.
oh, like you're going through it, and then you learn so much about yourself. But if you don't learn about yourself, and if you don't learn from these mistakes, and you don't like be understanding of what the causes are to the obstacles that you've actually set for, that you actually have seen in the first place, then you're not learning shit. You're not learning anything about yourself. So you have to lock down the process, and that comes with like bringing awareness to why you do what you do.
And I think that's the biggest thing as well with identity, in terms of I want to be like a fit person. I want to be a healthy person. I want to be like a successful founder. It's all just driven in the top 6 inches, though. And I know that even
Mm.
sounds cliche to says like let's say, but like, me and you can both wake up today, do the same type of work on the same type of business, but one person will just be better, just but how to mentally frame it. And it's been a significant part even to my own business, as you say, like when you're getting through the shit, but using the other life examples. And I think I use this analogy, which could be helpful for like even founders, is that the way I kind of look at it sometimes is that when I've built something, or I've worked in, I'm working with a company called Revolut. They're a very aggressive, scale up, very, very promising big company in Europe and across the world, whatever. And I always think to myself saying that if I've done that level of detail and difficulty and challenge, I can definitely do something else. Don't know
Mm.
what that is, but
Mm.
if I pick up something new, I can definitely do something. It could be more difficult. It might take a bit more time, but I can definitely do something though. So I try to use that as a frame to say, well, if you want to go do something that's more health orientated, you've built this successful business. You can definitely get healthy. All you got to do is hit your macros, hit your steps, hit your training. You know, it's a lot less more complicated than you think it may be.
Yeah.
So I try to use these other examples and tie them in, and then I find sometimes speaking to people that they'll hit that mental block and be like, well, I'm not going to be as healthy as you. Or maybe someone could say it to you saying, well, Dan, you've been looking really good for over 20 years. It's a lot more difficult than me. So it's there's different ways to frame it, I believe.
Yeah, and then one thing I love to frame it as, especially with founders and entrepreneurs, is building a body is very much like building a business. It is
Exactly.
so much like it. And I'll use an example. So I have this client of mine. and he was struggling with his diet a lot, struggling with the process and the habit of just like tracking his foods. And one of the things that we did with him is we actually said, hey, think about it this way, right? Calories are like your budget. You have $2,000 that you can spend in a day, right? So why don't you just like, send me your budget every single day of things that you spend. You can like take a picture, or you can like send me what the actual like cost of it is. And for some reason with him, that clicked. He's just like, oh shoot, like it really is about like kind of just like kind of like using like calories as like finances a little bit, and for him it clicked. And then when it comes to like people building their own business, it's like, what do you do? First of all, we set out the strategy. We don't just say we want to make like $1 million or $1 billion and create a $1 billion company. We actually start at the end. We actually say, okay, so this is what we want to create. Okay, so what are all these pillars that need to build the foundation of actually creating this thing? What are the obstacles that are going to happen as a result of us trying to get after this goal? Okay, so what's the solution to these obstacles? Well, how are we going to react to it when they happen? And also, what is the plan? What's the GPS? What's our direction, right? So it's very much like building a business, and I think that's kind of like one of the ways in which entrepreneurs can get their minds around this. And then at the end of it all, it is really the psychology that is the biggest barrier to their physiology. So even though an entrepreneur can be like, oh yeah, I get it, it's like building a business, yada yada yada, whatsoever. What we have to do is we have to understand, like, okay, so what is it do you feel is causing you to act in certain ways? So I'll use again another client as an example. This is actually a lot of clients go through this, which is stress eating. So I've heard people like, oh, I don't have to eat throughout the day, and then when I get back home, they eat like 3,000 calories all at once. Why am I not losing weight? Right? They're like, what's happening? And that's a combination of a couple of things. It's a combination of one, obviously, like your meal schedule is causing you to overeat at night. That's number one, right? If you're not eating enough during the day, then it's going to cause massive appetite swings at night. The other one is also stress. And when people go through stress, what do they want to do? The easiest thing to do is numb it out with food or alcohol or marijuana or whatever it is. The hardest thing to do is to do the things that actually mitigate stress in the first place, and to set up systems in a way where that mitigates the stress. And also, the harder thing to do is ask yourself, why am I reacting to stress and emotion this way? Right? So when we're getting emotional about something, what happens is that we want to numb it. And that's why we have social media. That's why we have all these things that just give us like instant hits of dopamine, just so we don't have to feel what we're feeling, boredom, whatever it is. What we have to do is we have to face up to these emotions. We have to understand, okay, so why do I react in this sort of way? I'll give you an example. So one of my clients had problems gaining weight. And I was just like, for me, I'm just like, I wish I had that problem, I wish I had it, but some people are like that. How do I gain weight? How do I gain weight? Now, we got all the way down because he was just like avoiding snacking. He doesn't want to snack. He didn't feel like snacking. And one of the reasons is, after we dug down enough times, was when he was a child. He's actually, he comes from France, and just grandmas in general from like way back then. He was about like 60 years old. So grandmas back then are just like savage, right? So when he would go and open the fridge in order to get a piece of food, his grandmother would like beat his hand, right? And she'd be like, we don't open the fridge unless it's mealtime. That would happen over and over and over until it became a habit for him to not open up that fridge. And then now that acts as a tick. Now he knows, like, now he understands, like, he didn't even think about that at all. He's like, I just don't feel like snacking. I don't know why. And then we worked it back, and he's like, oh shit, that could be it, right? There's also the opposite side of the spectrum. I had a client who would just always eat his stress and always eat his anxiety because back then his grandma would feed him food every single time he was acting up, every single time. So then she would just feed him food just to shut him up. just so we don't feel, that. So we use these things in ways to deal with our state. And we've been trained to do this. Most of us have been trained to do this. It's kind of like hey, good job. Here's an ice cream cone kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So what we have to do is we have to find out where that comes from, because you can't have awareness without understanding the root cause. Then, just like figure out, okay, so how exactly do I want to react in this particular situation? What am I going to do with this? And then I'll be honest, like sometimes this stuff can get so deep that you have to actually pair up a therapist along with what you're doing in order to help them get over that particular type of emotion. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like, I totally forgot what the question was, but I'm pretty sure it was along the lines of what we were just talking about. But yeah,
we don't worry, man. We go down many different rabbit holes. It's crazy though how much a lot of things can be tied back to childhood, isn't it? How like a lot of these like learned behaviors, for good or for bad, come back to early behaviors. And Andrew Huberman wrote a really good piece about that, saying that leveraging learned behaviors can be, can destroy you, and it can be the making of you at the same time, because you've known it from an earlier stage. I've actually read a recent book that's actually, well, it's not a recent book, it's an old book. Recently I read a book called Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas, and there's a whole concept of fear and anxiety in financial markets. So 95% of traders will lose money statistically, and it's not due to the fact that markets are out to get you, because that's not the reality. The reality is, from the very beginning that you were born, Dan, someone was telling you to put down the pen, to don't draw on the wall, that was wrong, you're wrong, this is wrong, your belief isn't correct, stop doing this. And that's a learned behavior that just cognitively is always going around in our head. It's like a swirling wind. And then we go into something that is completely objective. Like financial markets are completely objective. They don't have any biases. Yet we have these like things in our brain. And the whole book, it's 200 pages, is about how to unwire that example, and how to slowly unwire it. And going into every other aspect of life, it's exact same. It's emotional control. And me in that example, it's the exact same. How do I face emotional control? And I think for me, the best approach in terms of food is structure. I have set meals. I'm trying to put on a couple of kg at the moment. So I have 6 meals a day, structured, it's ordered. I know what I'm eating and whatnot. So that's kind of my approach. But for you, what would you recommend busy people, high profile people with a lot of things on their plate, from a diet perspective? How should they structure, and how should they think about diet?
They should actually go about making things as easy for themselves as humanly possible to eat the meals that they need to eat. And I love the structure piece, because that is a part of it. It's not, I call it like, so everyone thinks about like the what of eating. Oh, what should I eat? What should I eat? Like all this kind of stuff. What food should I eat? When the reality is, it's like, it's both the how and the what, right? So how exactly are you eating? And that means meal timing. That means how fast are you eating? How slow are you eating? How much are you eating to fullness? And then you have the what of eating, which is like, okay, so what foods, like how much protein, how much, what kind of like foods are we putting into our bodies, the micronutrients that we need, all this kind of stuff, micros and macros. So that's number one, is going to be creating that structure and doing it in a way where we can make it easy on them. So a lot of entrepreneurs and high achievers, especially for people who are like living busy lives, they can go about it one of two ways. And it depends on their situation. If they have absolutely zero time to cook their meals, I tell them to get meal prep delivery, right?
100%.
Yeah, like they're just so proud of they're just so proud and stuck in their ways sometimes. And also they're like they have so much mouth pleasure too, because they're ordering DoorDash and Chipotle all day and stuff. But it's like, I just get them to have the macros already set up for them, have the meals already set up for them, have it in front of their face. Eating food is a byproduct of getting this energy and getting vitality and getting nutrients in your body. So why not automate that process? Now, some entrepreneurs have wives that would cook for them. So I'm like, okay, cool. Get your wife to like cook your food and bring it with you to work. So that's like one way. It's like automate the actual systems of getting food into your body. Now, the other thing that I say with entrepreneurs, especially, is like a lot of them work with schedule, right? And with their schedule, they will hit a flight no matter what, right? But when it comes to their workouts, they're like, why am I missing all my workouts? They will meet that client at like 11 a.m. on the dot, they'll be there 5 minutes early. But when it comes to their to walking, they're not going to get their steps in. So why is this? The reason is because it's not in your schedule, and you got to put it in your schedule, and you got to make it red, and you got to make it so like, you know, so a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of like treat it like this foregone kind of like conclusion of just like, okay, well, here's my workout. I'm going to get it in. I'm going to try to get in at 7 a.m. or whatever. Try. I hate that word. That's the worst word ever. I'm going to try to get it in. And I love calling people out when they say that, because entrepreneurs never stand for that shit when it comes to their business. But when it comes to them, they're like, I always say like 90% of them say try when it comes to their bodies. I'm like, there ain't no fucking thing as try, bro.
And you're better off just setting a cadence, man, and say, I'll only do 2 days.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll only do 3 days versus saying, I'm going to do 4, and then you just fuck it all off.
Sorry, exactly. You don't even have to do an hour. Like I got some people doing like say 3 days, 15 minutes a day. Like we start off with that. We start off with the lowest hanging fruit possible, right? You can always build up, right? You don't want to like you want to start with like the lowest, and then you want to build up from there. You don't want to start with like the hour and a half long workout and be like, all right, let's pare it down, let's pare it down, let's pare it down. Let's actually like build up from what the foundational stuff that you have to do, and let's work up. So when it comes to the workouts, we put these in the schedules, like bar none. It's in red, 30 minutes, however long that you're giving yourself to do it. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs will bite off more than they can chew, especially when it comes to their time. So they'll say, okay, they'll say like, okay, so how much? We'll ask them, how much time do you have to do your workout? They're gonna say like, oh, I have an hour, like 3 days a week. And then the reality is like, no, you don't have an hour 3 days a week. So what we do is we take that time, we usually cut it by 25% to 50%. We get them to do the most like foundational things. Usually like with entrepreneurs, unfortunately, if I were to do a perfect workout for them, I would get them doing like, just like straight sets, progressive overload, long, somewhat of like moderate rest periods, but they'll have that time to wait. So what we do with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially those who don't have that much time to spend in the gym, we actually do things in supersets and trisets. You can still get like the strength benefit, the hypertrophy benefit out of it. It's a little bit more cardiovascular in nature. And also it cuts the gym time in like half, and you're still getting the same amount of work done. I'm not a fan of circuits. I'm not a fan of these, but unfortunately you have to do what you got to do. So we set up the system for eating. We set up the schedules. And actually, when we say schedules, we say standards as well. Like, what is your standard of working out? What is your standard of movement every single day? Put these in their schedules, mark it in red. And what we also want to point out is just like, hey, dude, what we're aiming for is 80%. We're not aiming for 100, right? And a lot of entrepreneurs deal with this like all or nothing mentality when it comes to their bodies. And if they don't do something perfectly, they basically say, okay, I screwed the pooch. And then it just goes into this shame cycle where it's just like they start feeling bad. They eat the full box of Tim Tams, whatever it is. And then they just like say, okay, well, I'm just going to go harder tomorrow, right? We say, hey, we're going to go 80, right? Just aim for 80. If you get 80, again, we're not dealing with like the top of the top athletes. We're not dealing with LeBron James. I'm not dealing with, the Olympians, of the world. I'm actually dealing with people who have very high stress jobs. People who just want to get in shape, people who just want to look confident taking their shirts off or in a bikini. That's all they want to do, right? They want to have energy. They want to sleep well. They want to mitigate stress. They're not trying to win gold, in whatever sport it is. So we don't have to set those standards for them. We can actually say, hey, 80% is all you got to do. And then that takes a little bit of pressure off of them, right? Instead of thinking you got to be perfect and all or nothing, you can actually just, like hit 80% and you're still going to get like some pretty good benefit.
Yeah, it's because everywhere else in your life, they couldn't operate at 80%. It had to be 100. Yeah. Or let's say failure of the business would be if you split your time and then you only had 80%, well, then the business is not going to progress at the same pace. There's small nuances there that are just like hugely like applicable to life as well, though, like small things that it's a minor changes that add up, and they're much more tangible than, of course, the hard metrics are 3 days in a week, we hit 45 minutes a week, and you want your nutrition on plan. But it's funny, it's like a different change. It's good to hear that you recommend that people can outsource the meal aspect of it, because I'm hugely behind that. Like, there's great companies that are better than you doing it. think of it as well like this. Like, if it's a startup, you'd outsource to a vendor.
Bodybuilders do this as well.
Of course,
Yeah.
that's the whole point. That's the whole point of it, and it's to make it as simple and as repeatable as possible. Because often the best plan is the plan that you can stick to, because it's going to be
Yes.
better than anything else. You know,
100.
around the stress element, that you mentioned some great different aspects of it. Um, Stress and food kind of together. First, you kind of want to ask about actually food profiles, if you
Mm.
don't mind. So you wrote a lot about inflammatory foods, which
Mhm.
I think is really, really good. It's it's something that people don't think of is the actual inflammation that will come from food. So firstly, what type of like food would you not recommend someone to eat?
I don't mean to be trite when I say this, but there are no foods that I don't get clients to eat. I don't say for them to stay away from any foods
Hmm.
whatsoever. I don't. And the reason I do that is because we're talking about long-term sustainability, and one thing I want to do with clients is make sure that we get away from this good or bad food mentality, right? Get more into like it's like Alex Hormozy. He actually says this one thing where he says like wealth is not an outcome, it's a ratio. And the same thing goes with like healthy eating. Healthy eating is not an outcome, it's not 100, it's actually a ratio. The ratio of like 80-20 or 70-30, whatever it is. And I think like one of the things that I notice with like clients is like they'll be like, that food's good or that food's bad. I want them to be able to look at foods as neutral and almost like a number in terms of like its macronutrient and micronutrient profile. Now,
Mm.
if there was a food that I would want clients to eat less of, they would be processed sugars, foods that have been made with seed oils, foods that have been through a process that are low in satiety or that give you low satiety. And
Hmm.
foods like that would be like what we mentioned before is like Tim Tams, things okay, so what's like Cap'n Crunch, we're talking just like about processed foods in general. So
Hmm.
that's probably, and then one of the things that we understand about say seed oils, processed foods, and also processed sugars is the fact that there is some sort of effect that it has on the gut. And we don't know enough about the gut right now. We're actually just starting to understand it. And there is a significant impact on the health or your gut microbiota and its effect on your brain. And the more inflamed that your gut is, the more, I wouldn't say the more inflamed your brain is, but everything that happens right here is actually dictated by what happens inside of your gut. Actually, not all of it, but a good portion of it. I'm no
Hmm.
gut expert. I'm going to put that out there right now. So a lot of gut experts could be reading or watching this and be like, "This guy is like saying whatever, whatever." I'm not. I'm not a gut expert, but what I do know is that when clients eat whole, nutrient dense options in terms of like their foods,
Hmm.
when they eat a high protein diet, when they have plenty of fruits and vegetables in relation to that diet, what happens as a result is they just feel better from both a brain and body perspective. So I would opt more for, I would say, nutrient dense options. I would opt less for process options, and I would not necessarily say to stay away from them entirely, because I do believe that when it comes to sustainability, we need to actually have these. We need to actually allow ourselves to have these treats every now and then, so to speak, because it's what helps us live, and it's what helps us kind of like be a part of society that does that. How often you should do that, I don't know. There's also something to be said about alcohol as well. You're talking about how it's off of alcohol and how it got off, um, I've stopped drinking it. I have nothing against people who drink alcohol, but it just doesn't seem to have any like net benefit from a health perspective.
Hmm.
And also, even from a brain perspective, it doesn't seem to have a net benefit. It actually seems to be a net negative. From a gut perspective, it seems to have a significant effect on the health of your gut. And again, if we're talking about how the gut actually affects the brain, I would say that mitigating alcohol or moderating alcohol intake, or if you want, if you're so inclined, you can get rid of it altogether. That's going to significantly improve your health from a large, by a large degree.
Yeah, that's very fascinating about the alcohol, because Andrew Huberman again came out with another piece around that, saying that all the research that has been done, like the conclusion is that it's all overall net negative. Like, of
Yeah.
course, there's probably social benefits or whatnot as well. But just from a body perspective, it's crazy on that.
Yeah.
From a diet perspective, especially the profiles, you spoke a lot about the macronutrients breakdown. Where does carbs fit in this in terms of like benefits or positives from your perspective? Because for me, like I've seen the benefits of being on low, the benefits of being on moderate, benefits of being on
Mm.
high, and actually, in fact, at the moment, I'm on in around 480 grams a day. But
Wow.
it's interesting, my fat is so low; it's at 50 grams that I I had an adaptation period of like 3 to 4 days whereby I was like all over the place, but now I'm actually kind of coasting, which is really strange to see how that adapted so well. And I do walk 12,000 steps a day, and I do train for 60 minutes a day. So
Yeah.
that's a side note.
So when it comes to carbohydrate intake, I do believe that it actually is in relation to how insulin sensitive someone
Mm,
is, right? It doesn't mean that they're not going to lose weight or anything like that. Just from my own practice, I've just found that having clients on moderate to low carbohydrate intake, it relates to just overall well-being and overall fat loss, or not fat loss, but actually weight loss. Now, I have nothing against carbs. I actually like to use them in terms of like a performance tool. So when I'm actually working with clients, the things that I would say is like instead of like going for what most people would reach for is like the processed carbs, say like the cereals, all that kind of stuff. I would actually say opt for more like single ingredient carbs, fruits, vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, things of that nature. Opt for more of those types of carbs, and those are probably going to give you a better benefit when it comes to your performance inside the gym. You're probably going to lift a little bit more, probably going to lift a little bit better, and it's just going to make you better from it. Actually, it's going to make your mood a little bit better from an overall perspective when it comes to kind of like just like how you feel. If I were to take like carb intake and really just like optimize it for a client, I would actually say to go like low carb, high fat on the days that you're not necessarily working out. I would say for them to go higher carb, moderate carb on the days that they are working out, lower fat. And that is if I'm to optimize it. But for most people, they don't need that level of optimization. They just need to like focus on their calories and getting enough protein in, to be honest. Like that's what they need to focus on.
mhm.
So, I'm pretty neutral when it comes to carbs, but I do think that it has a benefit for people who are on the more insulin, or actually who are not as insulin sensitive, and people who kind of have a lot of fat in their bellies. I do think that they actually do quite well, or quite a little bit better with kind of like a low carb. Would I go no carb? Absolutely not. I
Mhm.
don't think that you should eliminate any type of macronutrient from your body whatsoever, unless you are actually doing it in a therapeutic setting. I know that there are some settings in like epilepsy and other types of like things of that nature where going keto can actually help, and eliminating carbs can actually help in that sense. They've actually seen it to be beneficial for people with neurological disease as well. So, I mean, when it comes to carbs, it's like it depends.
Of course. It's like
Yeah.
it's like everything. It's like everything. I completely agree with you actually, because I think the extreme diets work for extreme cases. So as you mentioned there about specific genetic diseases or whatnot, if you need to be on low carb for a specific reason, then that will work for it. But it's funny because I've tried a carnivore diet. My
Mm,
best mate has tried a carnivore diet independently, and both of us came to the same conclusion that we just felt just like nothingness. Like I
mm,
literally 30 days into it, I felt like nothing. I had no pump. I had no spikes or drops in energy. I just had this like feeling of nothingness.
mm.
And I went back to it. And I was just like, look, I won't go back to that anymore. And I felt really weird. I had a bit of water retention. It
Yeah.
was strange from a body perspective.
There's something to be said about survivorship bias when it comes to these diets as well, right? So
Mm,
the people that you're hearing from are not the people, like no one says that they lost 30 pounds and gained it all back. They say they lost 30 pounds and they just kept it that way. No one talks about the weight that they gained back, right? When it comes to the carnivore diet, or when it comes to like the keto diet, it's like this, the survivors who are the biggest proponents of it. But how many people, aside from them, have utterly failed and not seen any benefit from that diet whatsoever? It's kind of
mhm.
like the extreme people, the people with the loudest voices are the ones who get heard,
Yeah.
essentially. And it's unfortunate because the survivors are the ones that are talking. the 95% of people or 99% of people who don't do well with that diet, they don't say shit. And if they do say shit, then the most extreme people with like the biggest followings will probably be like, you're a fear monger or whatever, like whatever it is. But it's only the survivors that are actually talking right now when it comes to these extreme diets.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Completely agree. So, is there a link between carbs and inflammation? Because the way I see sometimes is that, I process carbohydrates really, really well. So I have very, very little, like, I can consume a lot, and in between I don't need much of a rest. But is there any sort of inflammation there between, like, let's say rice or pasta or potatoes?
Again, I say it depends. I would also say that I don't believe carbs or single ingredient carbohydrates cause inflammation. I do believe that the overconsumption of these carbs cause inflammation
Hmm.
in the form of fat. So when it comes to things like, let's just say, like we'll use like gluten or we'll use like pasta as an example. If you are one of like the very small percentage of people who have a gluten sensitivity, obviously that's going to cause inflammation inside your body, right? To the 90% ish people who don't have gluten sensitivity, if you eat it within moderation, probably not going to create inflammation. And again, like I hate to say like it depends, it
Of
always
course.
is. Like I'm the most like boring fucking like I guess you could say fitness guy out there, because I'm not like trying to say some extreme shit. And
Hmm.
I don't it's not and this is actually based on my character as well. It's like I always like see kind of like the both sides of the angle. I've seen it work here. I haven't seen it work here. So I wish I could say some shit like, "Yo, fuck yeah, it causes inflammation or whatever." But the reality is that it's done by a case by case basis. And again, I'll go back to it's the overconsumption of these carbs in the forms of calories that cause the inflammation most times. And in the small percentage of people who have sensitivities to some various forms of carbs, whatever they may be, then that is obviously ingesting it is going to cause more inflammation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It goes the same for a lot of things, man. It's like it's things actually in moderation.
Yeah.
It's you don't
Mm,
need to go too hard or go too
yeah.
little at these
I gotta
things.
be like Liver King and shit, like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and like just
Check.
like like just say the most
So deep
extreme
down the
shit.
rabbit hole at that point.
Oh god, yeah.
Um, because carbs is quite interesting too, because there's obviously like some people will have mental fog from it. Like I even like more plates, more dates
Mm.
says that like he can't like train or he can't work after eating carbohydrates, which made me think that I couldn't, and then I realized then that it's
Mm.
just periods of digestion, and then
There
I'm
is
fine after I settle it out.
there is something like to that though as well. And I do believe that like different people react to carbs in different ways, right? So let's
Mhm.
just say more plates, more dates. Like actually, one of the things that I find with carbs is that it does somewhat, if you take in like a good amount of carbs, it does have this kind of like sleepy effect for some people.
Definitely, definitely,
Yeah. For yourself, like obviously not, but it also depends on like how you're using them, how you're timing them as well. If you're timing them like let's just say like before your workout, then obviously you're putting them to use. And
yeah.
then
Hmm.
that can also have an effect on your energy afterwards too.
Hmm.
So it depends on timing, it depends on context, it depends on kind of like gene expression as well. Um, I do think that sometimes like it does have an effect on culture, like say like Chinese people and rice, Japanese people and rice. I do believe that maybe to a degree we're a little bit more kind of like we're a little bit more, I guess you could say, just like exposed to rice. So
Of
our
course.
bodies are kind of like, just like natural. For other people, it could be potatoes or whatever it is. But that's
Hmm.
just a theory. It's not something that's based on like evidence or science that to my degree of knowledge.
Oh, of course, it's just baked into the kind of society. Like every morning in Singapore, when I walk to the gym, like a lot of the restaurants are open. Everybody is. 1 second, I just need to get. My 1 second, my alarm's going off.
Oh
It's
yeah, let's.
midnight.
Oh shoot. This is the midnight alarm. Is the what is it? Is the midnight alarm supposed to like wake you up at midnight or
No, no,
like
no. This is actually it's actually 1 a.m. That's actually what time it is. My
oh my
my apologies,
gosh.
man. I apologies. I'll edit this out.
I feel so bad.
So,
I'm sitting here with like the sun on my face right now, and it's like
man,
daytime.
don't worry. I'm used to this stage. Sorry, what I was gonna say there was every morning when I'm walking to the gym, I always see like the restaurants open and like all locals are always eating rice dishes. Like they're probably more used to it
Mhm.
than Westerners. It's just kind of natural. So I imagine a lot of entrepreneurs and high achievers come to you looking to like maximize like their mental cognition, their overall like mental output. How how does someone optimize that based on training and nutrition? Like what's a way that people can do that?
Let's start with the foundations first, which is going to be the amount of body fat that you have has a direct effect on blood flow
Mhm.
to the brain. So, number one, number two, number three is let's get ourselves to a body fat where we're actually avoidant of preventable disease, and that allows our bodies and brains to work efficiently. That is like the overall foundation of having a healthy functioning brain. The second thing is going to be movement. So, how many steps are you getting throughout the day? I just put out a thread on Twitter yesterday about the whole idea that getting 10K steps per day is a myth. It was actually done by a marketing company in Japan who said, get 10 steps a day. And that was actually one of their slogans. I'm probably like kiboshing like whatever the actual saying was, but they said get 10K steps a day. But when it comes to kind of like the efficacy of like the studies actually showing that, hey, 4,500 steps a day reduces your mortality by 41%. Getting 7,500 steps a day reduces it by 61% or 65%, I think. And so movement is going to be a huge factor to what you do. Our ancestors used to get like about 16 to 17,000 steps a day. The average American gets about 2,000 to 4,000 steps a day. And with movement, it affects your cognition. It affects your creativity. The greatest thinkers in our world, Steve Jobs. I'm not going to call J.K. Rowling like the greatest thinker of one of the greatest thinkers, but she's one of the greatest authors that we've ever seen. I believe it was Steve Jobs, J.K. Rowling. Who was it? There's another person, Carl Jung. They would take regular daily walks to jog their brains into thinking better. And what we need to do is we need to build out some form of daily movement. You don't have to make it cardio. Actually, I love the cardiovascular output for brain activity, but it could just be walking. And if you want to
Mhm.
do cardio, I think one of the coolest things that we do with our clients is either one of two things. So like in the middle of the day, they either go for a walk, 15 to 30 minutes, or they do walking meetings. We kind of like build it in, so it's kind of like just sticky. They're doing something already, so we want to make it like that. Or if they have enough time, then we get them to do like a cardio session, zone two cardio, cardio where you can actually like have somewhat of a conversation. We don't do this to get them to burn fat. We do this to get them to do it in the middle of the day because number one, it mitigates stress, which allows their brains to work better. It increases productivity, energy, and creativity. So movement is one of those things that we need to bake in our days. And you and I, right now, it's 1 a.m. where you are. It's like 1:06 where I am, and we're sitting on desks right now. We're sitting. And one of the things that we have to understand is that when we're sitting on desks, this is one of the things that actually holds our brain back from its fullest potential. The other thing is going to be nutrient dense foods. So when you're eating or what you put into your body is going to have a direct reflect or reflection on how your brain works. And the more, I'm not going to say like the more micronutrients that you put in, the more output that you're going to get from your brain, but it is going to help. There are certain micronutrients out there like choline and lutein that you get from eggs.
Mhm.
I think we actually call beef liver to be the most nutrient dense food on the planet. And also vegetable intake, green leafy vegetables. We want to make sure that our diets are lined up in a way where they're not going to be necessarily fucking with our brains. And that means eating a diet that is comprised of whole, nutrient dense foods. So that's that. The other one I think is like exercise, but I'm iffy on exercise. Like we already talked about the movement piece, but personally for me, like when I do like a heavy lifting session, my brain is fried.
Same.
Like, yeah, like I can't think. So
Same, man. I'm the
like,
exact fucking same. Afterwards, I am in pieces, man.
I don't get it. And then I'm just like, when I'm after a heavy lifting session, I get back home, I see my wife and daughter, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't. I don't like schedule any heavy workloads for me like after I'm done heavy lifting. So when it comes to exercise, I think it's just related to movement. The other one that I would throw in there is getting sun exposure on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis, especially in the morning time. So I think one of the best ways in order to have high brain cognition is to follow your normal circadian rhythms. And we'll get into sleep in just like a second. So when it comes to your circadian rhythms, think of your body as this conveyor belt, and you're making like this bobblehead that looks like you, right? And if there's any kind of like jamming in this conveyor belt in this automated process, it's basically going to jam up the entire process, and the bobblehead is not going to be made the way that it should be made. And the thing is like our bodies are like machines. When you wake up, you get morning sun exposure, it turns on your circadian rhythms, it releases cortisol. And when you go to sleep at night, what happens as a result is, you put on your blue light blockers, which we'll talk about in a second. But what happens is that you end up producing melatonin, which enables you to sleep, and which actually enables you to actually go to sleep in the first place. So following your circadian rhythms, getting sun exposure, especially in the mornings, is I feel like it's one of like the most underrated ways to improve brain cognition. I think like getting some walking in first thing in the morning, one of the like best habits of all time, because you get the morning sun exposure, you get physical activity, you get those steps in, and then it's like a walking meditation, especially if you do it without a phone. Personally, for me, when I go walking, I kind of like to do it without my phone because I don't want to be taking in information. Like we're taking in information all the time. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be away from taking in information. So the last part that I feel is like the biggest pillar to getting better brain function is going to be your sleep. And this is actually like something I've been realizing is the fact that when it comes to sleep, it's not about like getting 8 hours. It's not about like, I think the range is like 6 to 8 hours. And you have to find out what is that portion for you that's going to make you feel the most energetic, that's going to make you feel great in the morning. Some people who get like 8 hours are like, I feel fucking groggy in the morning. I don't know. Like, and then some people get 7 hours are like, I feel great. If I get more than that, if I get less than that, then it's a different story. But improving your sleep and improving your quality and quantity of sleep, getting the right amount of sleep that you need, and also improving the quality of your sleep is one of these things that is one going to improve your cognition, it's going to improve your energy, but it's also going to protect you from neurological disease. And I was just watching a podcast with Max Lugavare and Joe Rogan, and they were talking about dementia and Alzheimer's, and they were saying like dementia, when people start to have the symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's, it didn't happen then. It actually happened decades ago based on their lifestyle choices. And the thing about sleep is a big part of protecting yourself from neurological disease. Actually, like when you sleep, that's when you get rid of all this waste in your brain. And when it comes to like your sleep, a couple things like we talked about morning sun exposure, talk about exercise, talk about movement. Diet has a big factor in that. I actually like to do this thing called like the 3-2 method. And I think I may be getting ahead of myself because we were going to talk about sleep optimization, but I might as well just talk about it now. But I have this thing called the 3-2 method, and it's very simple. 3 hours, actually, it's 3-2-1. Sorry, the 3-2-1 method. So 3 hours before you go to sleep, no eating food, because that enables you to have deeper sleep, and that enables you to actually be able to go to sleep a little bit faster. The 2 hours before you go to sleep, no liquids enter your body. This is actually a rule, especially for people who just like wake up in the middle of the night and actually have to like go to the washroom and go pee. There's people out there. There's a good portion of people out there. Some people don't. Some people do.
Like
Right?
me.
And I was like, yeah, you obviously don't need that, right? And then you have the 1 hour, which is like 1 hour before going to sleep. Like stay away from like all forms of screens and also cognitive forms of just stimulation. So don't go on social media if you feel like it's going to rile you up. Don't read your email if you're going to get an email from like Johnson saying we need you to do this, and it's going to like set you off. Make sure that you're doing things to kind of like bring your thought levels down to a point where you are going to be as thoughtless as humanly possible by the time you enter sleep. And that's the 3-2-1 method right there. And the other things I would say is eye mask, setting up your environment to make sure that you are sleeping in the right way, which is like blackout shades. If you sleep with like your girlfriend or whatever, it's like having separate blankets.
Say,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, dude.
You're saying everything
Yeah,
correct, man.
people are like, hey man, what if I want like that middle of the night good, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, dude, like lift her blanket, give her the signal, you know? It's like you're acting like it's like some chastity belt or something like that, dude, come on. And so have separate blankets, because in every single relationship that I always see, one person's running hot, one person's running cold. One person hogs the blankets, and then the middle of the night or the morning, you're like, what happened? Like, where did all these blankets go? So I'm just
Hmm.
like, it's not like you're sleeping in separate rooms, just like sleep in separate blankets. It's just going to be
Hmm.
beneficial for both of you. The other thing I would say is like find the right mattress, right? Like, you're going to be in your shoes, or actually this thing that a mentor told me is like, get a good mattress, get a good pair of shoes, because if you're not in one, you're going to be in the other, right? So get a good mattress for yourself. I personally like firm mattresses. I'm a fan of like Purple. It's like a Purple mattress. It's like a very firm mattress. It's done by like NASA scientists or whatever. I don't know if that's a marketing ploy, but anyways, I like that. I like that bed. I like a firm pillow. Just make sure that everything in your environment is actually set up for you to go to sleep. The other thing I love, which is something that I don't really recommend everyone to do, is actually mouth taping. So a lot of times when we go to sleep, especially for people that have sleep apnea, they breathe through their mouth, which ends up disrupting their sleep. So if people actually wake up during the night, they are not going to pee, but they just find themselves waking up in the middle of the night. They don't know why. It's possibly because that they've been taking in the air through their mouth as opposed to their nose. So what we're finding is that about 25% of nitric oxide production, which is responsible for a number of functions, one of them being sleep, it actually gets produced in the nostrils, but we're losing that when we're breathing in through the mouth. And also, when we're breathing through the mouth, it actually collapses our airways a little bit, because we're actually breathing in too much air, as opposed to the nostrils, which ends up controlling the flow of air that goes into our bodies. And also, like when we think about it, so there's like two states. There's like parasympathetic, there's sympathetic, right? So parasympathetic is like this recovery state. It's very relaxed. And that actually comes from breathing through the nose. If you want to hype yourself up and you want to like wake up in the morning, hyperventilate, you go like Wim Hof breathing kind of stuff, right? It's like,
Hmm.
right? That's what you do to get this like this jolt of energy in your brain. And that's what we do when we're actually when adrenaline goes through our bodies. If we're getting chased by a bear, we're not breathing through our nose. We're like, get as much oxygen in here so we can like run the hell away. So what happens as a result when we sleep is that when we leave our mouths open, we're actually breathing in the parasympathetic, or actually in the sympathetic state. So what we want to do is we want to close our mouths, we want to breathe through our noses, and one of the ways to do this is artificially through taping our mouths. I use something called 3M. I forgot what it is. It's like 3M tape, but there's like a number of very inexpensive options out there. I tape my mouth, and I just pretty much use it to go to sleep and breathe through my nose. And that's actually been such a game changer. When it comes to sleep as well, one thing I'll put out there is like the way to track this, to know exactly to know if you are getting the right amounts of REM sleep, the right amounts of deep sleep, is get something like this. It's going to be it's an Aura Ring or a Whoop
Hmm.
band. I think Apple Watch is starting to do this right now. And what you want to do is like you just want to actually get a handle on what your sleep numbers are. How long are you
Hmm.
sleeping? How long is your REM? How long is your deep sleep? How long does it take for you to get to sleep? Your latency, and you want to be tracking this as along with all the stuff that you're doing, because sleep is one of the things that you're doing for 1/3 of your life. So you might as well make it as awesome as possible. And one of the things, last thing I realized about sleep, is the fact that it's like one of the fastest ways to get biofeedback. So if you do something right before you go to sleep, it will tell you the next morning, right? You'll feel it. If you drink alcohol before you go to sleep, you'll feel it the next morning, right? If you do one thing to your sleep or take a supplement, it will show up the next morning in terms of like how quality your sleep is by like taking on one of these trackers. So I think sleep is one of those things that you just like kind of throw things up at the wall, you test, and then see exactly what works for you. So those would be like
100%.
the main ones to actually have like a high functioning brain.
Man, you hit the nail on the head, 100%. And I think, a lot of people, including myself, would try get all the physical stuff out of the way. So, I have, get a lot of sunlight, living in Singapore, good weather, things like this, perfectly fine, good training, good walking, a bit of exposure to my phone, whatever, but not too much, I'd say, restricting it. But the real gap I had was when I had a sleep expert from Stanford on my podcast. She detailed very similar to what you're describing about your sleep performance. And ever since, I put my phone in the kitchen. It's in the kitchen right now. I know I have my lights on now, but this is an odd scenario. I'll be
Yeah.
recording this late. So phone in the kitchen, food 10 p.m. gone. I work quite late, but this is what's really interesting was the fact that I never ever ever set an alarm. I wake up naturally because I don't need to. I don't work till the evenings. So as a result, I'll just wake up naturally, 7:30 a.m. every single morning on
Mm,
point. So that's
mm,
why for me it's about the prelim, it's coming up to sleep, you know. But having that it'd be something interesting for even for yourself to check out. This woman she wrote a lot of great papers on mainly female pregnancies and cancers and different types of insomnia with women. It was really, really fascinating. A lot of it transferable to both men and women. But it's interesting because all the factors of dementia all come from those areas that we just take for granted. I don't
mm,
know. It's like we
mm.
abuse. I think the introduction of the Aura Ring and the Whoop bands and whatnot are like a great entrance because I think they're quite difficult sometimes to wear on your wrist. The ring seems a great solution. For me, I felt a bit anxious about always having it on my wrist.
Mm.
So maybe a ring is the way forward.
I think and we have to be careful with these wearables as well. The one thing I will throw out there is
Mm,
that they can actually dictate like how we feel about ourselves when we
yeah,
see certain things. So I've actually been toying with I've been wearing this for the past like couple of years, and something I've been toying with is just like taking a break away from it. Because sometimes when I look at it and it seems like I didn't get the sleep that I needed or whatever it is, it could have an effect on the way I feel like the rest of the day. I will throw something in there as well as like blue light blockers. Like if you are going to be looking at screens,
yeah.
definitely get like a pair of blue light blockers for yourself that block out the blue light. We don't want to give that signal to our brains and bodies when it comes to the sleep that we need.
Agreed, man. Agreed.
Yeah.
On the ring as well, something quite interesting about that. I'll leave you on this note is I have time restrictions on all apps on my phone. So all the major ones, so LinkedIn, WhatsApp,
Mm,
Instagram, whatnot. And again, to your point, I feel bad if I hit them. I hit them every day because they're only 30 minutes. So I'll knock them out more than likely because I'm creating content on platforms. But overall, the net benefit has been better. So like
mhm.
these are things that are obvious. It's like, oh, put a timer on your phone if you spend too long on your phone.
Yeah.
Uh, but it works. It does work. You just need to know how to like I suppose position it and then use it to your benefit. You know.
Yeah.
Dan, I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate your time. Where can people find all your stuff, your newsletter, everything?
Yeah, on Twitter, you can find me at FitFounder, and you can go to danfounder.com. If you just search out Dango on like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, you'll find me. So I also have a podcast called The Dango Show. It's where I do podcasts with lots of high achieving guys, and we talk about their health habits and also a lot of other stuff in there as well. And yeah, Darren, I appreciate this. I had a great conversation, and can't wait to do this again.
Of course, man. I really appreciate it.